The sun was blazing high when I heard the crackle, that sharp, electric snap that made my stomach drop. My Wi-Fi router lights went dead in an instant. I froze, staring at the lifeless modem, realizing someone had just cut my internet cables. I ran outside, furious only to find the culprits, the Karen sisters from next door, standing smugly by the property line, each holding a pair of scissors like trophies. They'd been complaining for weeks that my Wi-Fi was interfering with theirs, claiming my router signals were stealing their bandwidth. Ridiculous, right? But their grins told me this wasn't an accident. They'd actually done it. I confronted them, and they laughed. "Now maybe your Wi-Fi won't mess with ours," one of them sneered. I told them cutting someone's cables was a crime, but they just waved me off, confident they'd finally fixed their problem. But just a few seconds later, karma struck fast and hard. Their smug expressions vanished when both of their phones went blank. Their Wi-Fi vanished too. They didn't know that the cables they cut weren't just mine. Our lines ran through the same underground connection box. By trying to ruin my connection, they'd wiped out their own. Soon, chaos erupted on their porch. They were on their knees, poking the tangled cables, shouting into their phones that had no signal. Meanwhile, I stood by my driveway, watching the drama unfold under the bright, cloudless sky. The best part, the technician who arrived later told them exactly what they'd done, and it wasn't cheap to fix. That was the day the Karen sisters learned that cutting someone's internet isn't just petty, it's stupidly self-destructive. And this time, karma had perfect timing. The morning sun shone brightly across Maplewood Street, where every lawn seemed perfectly trimmed, and every neighbor pretended to be friendlier than they really were. Birds hopped across driveways, the hum of distant lawnmowers filled the air, and I was enjoying my peaceful cup of coffee on the porch, until I saw them. The Karen sisters. Lily and Brenda lived right next door to women who seemed to thrive on conflict. If there was ever silence in the neighborhood, they'd find a way to ruin it. They were the self-appointed guardians of the block, always on patrol for things that bothered no one except them. My trash can being an inch too close to the curb. Problem, my grass being slightly greener than theirs. Problem, even my wind chime. It's too loud for a peaceful morning. But this time their complaints had taken a strange new direction. My WI-feed. It started about a month ago when Lily knocked on my door one Saturday afternoon. She wore oversized sunglasses, her hair pinned in a tight bun, holding her phone like it was a piece of evidence. "Your Wi-Fi," she said without greeting, "is interfering with ours." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. "Excuse me?" "Yes," she insisted, waving her phone. "We keep losing signal. My shows keep buffering, and it started right after you upgraded your internet plan." Coincidence? I don't think so. Before I could respond, her sister Brenda appeared behind her, arms crossed like backup muscle. "We pay good money for high-speed internet," Brenda added. "But ever since you installed that big black router thing, our connection has been awful." I tried not to laugh. "That's not how Wi-Fi works," I explained calmly. "It's a personal signal, not something that interferes with your connection. Your router's on a different frequency." Lily gave me a sharp look. "Well, maybe you think you know better, but we've read online about signal interference. It's real." I wanted to tell her that her online research might have come from a conspiracy forum, but I bit my tongue. "I promise, my Wi-Fi isn't the problem," I said, and I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, the sisters kept watching me. Every time I stepped outside, I'd catch them glancing from their window or whispering while pointing toward my house. Once, I even saw Brenda holding her phone up like a signal detector, walking along our shared fence line as if she could physically see the invisible Wi-Fi waves. One morning, I came home from the grocery store to find them standing on their driveway, staring directly at my house. Lily had a notebook in hand, scribbling something. "Morning," I said cautiously. "Morning," Brenda replied in that clipped tone people use when they're pretending to be polite. "What are you two up to?" I asked. "Taking signal readings," Lily said proudly. "We're tracking when our Wi-Fi slows down. It happens every time you're at home." I blinked, unsure whether to laugh or feel concerned. "So you think my presence makes your Wi-Fi slower?" She shrugged. "Maybe your devices are leeching off ours. Maybe it's radiation. We're still figuring it out." I laughed softly. "You know that's not possible, right?" Brenda frowned. "That's what they want you to think." I asked. "The internet companies," Lily whispered dramatically, glancing around like someone might overhear her. "They cover up the fact that home routers interfere with each other. It's a huge secret." At that point, I realized arguing was pointless. You can't debate science with people who think they're smarter than science itself. So I smiled, wished them luck with their research, and went inside. But that was the day the situation started to escalate. The next few days were oddly quiet. Too quiet. I should have known they were planning something. My first clue came when I found a printed note taped to my front door. "Please lower your Wi-Fi range. IT's affecting our connection and causing health issues." The neighbor's health issues. That part actually made me laugh out loud. According to the Karen sisters, my router was not only destroying their internet but also giving them headaches and energy spikes. I took the note down, tossed it in the trash, and went about my day. Then, one afternoon, while trimming the hedge near our shared fence, I overheard them talking. "I told you," Brenda said. "If you won't listen, we'll have to fix it ourselves." "I just want our Wi-Fi back," Lily hissed. "Every time he's on his computer, our shows lag. It's ridiculous." I froze, holding my hedge trimmer mid. "Fix it themselves." That didn't sound good. Later that evening, I noticed them dragging an old toolbox into their backyard. They whispered as they set it down near the fence, then disappeared behind the shrubs. I couldn't see what they were doing, but I could hear faint metallic clinks like tools tapping against something. My stomach tightened. Whatever experiment they were up to, it couldn't be harmless, or by the next morning I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. The sun was bright, the air crisp, and the neighborhood seemed perfectly normal again. I made breakfast, opened my laptop to start work, and smiled when everything connected smoothly. Maybe, just maybe, the Wi-Fi war was finally over. But around mid-morning, as I stepped outside to grab the mail, I saw them again. The sisters were crouched along the side of my yard, wearing gardening gloves and whispering furiously. Brenda held what looked like a pair of pruning shears, while Lily had her phone open, muttering something about signal waves. "They froze when they noticed me mourning," I said slowly. "Oh." Lily straightened up immediately. "Just tending to our plants," she said, even though they were clearly nowhere near their own yard. "Plants," I repeated, glancing down. "You mean the grass on my side of the fence?" Brenda's eyes darted away. "We might have stepped over a little bit." I didn't push further, but I watched them walk away, my gut telling me something was off. After they went inside, I inspected the area they'd been working in, and that's when I noticed the small patch of dirt that had been freshly dug up near where my internet cable entered the ground. I crouched down. The soil looked disturbed, and a section of the black cable was slightly exposed. My pulse quickened. No way had they actually tried to mess with my Wi-Fi line. I brushed the dirt gently back over the cable, hoping it was just coincidence. Maybe they'd been pulling weeds. Maybe I was being paranoid. But something told me that this wasn't over, not even close. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the street glowed gold, I looked out my window and saw them again through the blinds, both sisters standing on their porch, staring at my house with matching scowls. Their Wi-Fi conspiracy had turned into a personal mission, and though I didn't know it yet, those stares were just the beginning of the chaos that would follow, because soon, the Karen sisters would cross a line, literally, and their little plan to fix their Wi-Fi would end up cutting them off from more than just the internet. It would cut them off from their pride, their peace, and the last bit of sanity they had left. The next morning began just like any other, bright sunlight spilling across the driveway, the faint smell of someone mowing their lawn down the street, and the soft buzz of my phone as new emails poured in. It was one of those rare peaceful days when everything felt calm. I brewed my coffee, set my laptop on the kitchen counter, and prepared to start my work-from-home shift. The Wi-Fi was smooth, fast, and stable, a small luxury I'd learned to appreciate, especially with the Karen sisters living next door. But peace, in this neighborhood, never lasted long. Around mid-morning, while I was in the middle of a video meeting, my screen froze. The cheerful face of my coworker turned into a pixelated blur, then vanished completely. My mouse spun in circles, and a small pop-up appeared. "No internet connection." I frowned. "Not again," I muttered, checking the router. The small green lights that usually blinked with activity were all dark. I tried rebooting it, unplugged, wait, replug, but nothing. The connection was completely dead. At first, I thought maybe it was an outage, so I stepped outside to see if anyone else was having the same issue. That's when I heard it faint laughter. It was coming from the other side of the fence. I walked quietly along my driveway until I had a clear view, and there they were, Lily and Brenda, both crouched near the boundary line, holding something shiny in their hands. At first I thought it was gardening shears. Then I saw the black cable running along the ground, the one that connected my router to the mainline box. My heart dropped. They were cutting my internet cable. For a moment, I just stood there speechless, watching them snip at the thick wire like mischievous kids pulling a prank. Each cut made a faint snapping sound. Brenda grinned as if she'd just discovered fire. "That should do it," she said, dusting off her hands. "Finally," Lily huffed. "Now we can have our Wi-Fi back to normal. His stupid router has been hogging all the signals." I took a slow, deep breath and stepped forward. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Both sisters froze. Lily's face turned red, while Brenda's mouth fell open. They looked like kids caught stealing cookies, except this time, it was a grown-up crime. We were just trimming," Lily stammered, holding up the scissors. "Trimming what?" I asked, pointing to the severed cable lying limp on the ground. "That's my internet line." Brenda rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You can't own the airwaves. Your Wi-Fi keeps crossing into our signal. We just adjusted it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Adjusted it? You literally cut through my line." "It's not our fault they ran the cables so close together," Lily shot back defensively. "If your Wi-Fi wasn't so strong, we wouldn't have had to do anything." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but I was too angry. "You two have officially lost your minds," I said sharply. "You just vandalized property. That's a crime." Brenda folded her arms. "Don't threaten us. We were protecting our internet." Before I could say another word, both their phones buzzed. Lily glanced down at hers, then frowned. My Wi-Fi just disconnected. Brenda checked hers too. Wait, mine's gone too. I almost burst out laughing. Looks like your adjustment worked a little too well. The truth was simple. Our homes were connected through the same underground service box. So when they sliced through my cable, they also cut their own. Within seconds, chaos broke out on their porch. Lily ran inside, yelling something about restarting the router. Brenda knelt down beside the mess of wires, poking them like she could magically repair the damage. Try it now, she shouted toward the house. No signal, came Lily's frustrated voice from inside. I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, watching the show unfold like it was a live sitcom. Need some help? I asked sweetly. Brenda glared at me. You did this on purpose. Oh sure, I said sarcastically. I cut my own internet line to make your lives difficult. Makes perfect sense. They ignored me and kept fumbling with the wires. Every time they touched the cut ends, a few sparks popped out. Brenda jumped back, gasping. Ow, it shocked me. That's what happens when you mess with something you don't understand, I said. Within 10 minutes, both sisters were completely flustered. Lily came back outside, hair messy, face red. We just wanted our Wi-Fi to stop lagging, she snapped. Yeah, well, congratulations, I said. Now you've got no Wi-Fi at all. That was when Lily's phone finally picked up a weak mobile signal. We'll call the company, she muttered. They'll fix it. Good idea, I said. And when they ask what happened, make sure to tell them you cut the cables yourself. I'm sure they'll rush right over. Her glare could have melted steel. While they made the call, I snapped a few photos, the cut wire, the scissors in Brenda's hand, the whole scene. If they tried to deny it later, I'd have proof. After a few minutes, Brenda hung up, her face pale. They said they'll send a technician. She mumbled, but we might have to pay for the repair. Might, I said with a smirk. Oh, you'll definitely pay for it. They both turned away, whispering to each other in panic. The technician couldn't come until late afternoon, which meant they'd be WI fields for hours. Watching them squirm was pure justice. As the day went on, I worked from my phone's hotspot, sipping cold coffee and occasionally peeking outside. The sisters were in full meltdown mode. Brenda paced the porch, waving her phone in the air like she was trying to catch invisible signals. Lily sat on the steps, muttering angrily about corporate scams and energy interference. Around noon, their panic reached new heights. I heard the faint sound of Lily shouting through the window, I can't even stream my shows. This is ridiculous. I grinned to myself. Karma's streaming just fine over here, I whispered. By the time the technician van arrived in the afternoon, the sisters were waiting like anxious children. The man stepped out of his van, scratching his head. So, he said, kneeling near the damaged line, how exactly did this happen? There was a long, awkward silence. Then Brenda mumbled, we were gardening. He gave her a skeptical look. Gardening? With wire cutters? Lily forced a laugh. It was an accident. The technician didn't buy it, but he didn't argue either. He checked the lines, sighed, and said, well, looks like someone cut through both connections. Repair's going to take a bit, and it's not covered. You'll need to pay for this. The color drained from their faces. Wait, Brenda said. Both connections. Yep, he replied. You share a junction box with your neighbor. When you cut his, you cut yours too. I stood on my porch, pretending not to eavesdrop, but I couldn't stop smiling. The universe had handled my revenge perfectly. As the technician packed up his tools, the sisters stood there defeated, their perfect hair messy, their faces red. The bright afternoon sun made the whole scene feel like poetic justice to self-righteous women standing over the mess they'd made, surrounded by silence where their Wi-Fi once buzzed. That was the moment they realized they weren't as clever as they thought. They'd tried to destroy my connection, but instead, they'd unplugged themselves from their own little digital world. And as I stepped back inside, router lights slowly flickering back to life, I couldn't help but think karma didn't need the internet to work. It had its own perfect signal. The next morning began unusually quiet. No shouting, no gossiping over the fence, no loud arguments between the Karen sisters. For a brief moment, I wondered if the great Wi-Fi war had finally come to an end. The sunlight poured over the neighborhood, golden and warm, glinting off the sisters' porch where they usually stood sipping their overpriced coffees. But that morning both their chairs were empty. I sat on my own porch, half expecting them to burst out and start blaming me again. My Wi-Fi had been restored late the previous evening after the technician replaced the cut line, and yes, the sisters ended up footing the bill. I overheard them arguing with him for nearly an hour, trying to avoid paying. Eventually, the poor guy just shrugged and told them flatly, you cut it, you own it. Now, it seemed like they were licking their wounds in silence. I should have felt relieved, but something told me the storm wasn't over. Just gathering strength around mid-morning, I decided to mow the lawn. As I pushed the mower across the grass, I noticed movement near the window next door. There was Lily, peeking through the blinds. When she realized I'd seen her, she ducked out of sight, then reappeared a second later pretending to dust her curtains. Typical. A few minutes later, Brenda came outside with her phone in hand, squinting toward my house like she was measuring the air. I turned off the mower. Morning, I called. trying to sound casual. She didn't answer right away, just kept looking at her phone. Finally, she said, "Our Wi-Fi is still slower than it used to be." I smirked. "Maybe it's the universe teaching you not to cut things you don't understand." Her face tightened. "We didn't mean to mess it up. We were fixing interference." I laughed softly. "Yeah, and I accidentally fixed my car by setting it on fire." Her glare could have burned holes through my fence. Without another word, she stomped back inside. For the rest of the day, I could feel their energy, that restless, bitter anger that only grows when someone refuses to admit they're wrong. Every time I looked toward their house, I caught glimpses of them whispering, pacing, or making notes. It was like watching two detectives work on a conspiracy case that existed only in their heads. Then, just after lunch, things got interesting again. I was sitting at my desk finishing some work when I heard a loud thud outside. I went to the window and saw the sisters dragging a small folding table into their yard. On it sat a laptop, a couple of strange devices that looked like phone boosters, and of course their favorite tool, the scissors. What on earth are they doing now? I muttered. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stepped outside and leaned against the fence. "Starting a tech business," I joked. Lily looked up sharply. "We're running a test." Brenda nodded seriously. "We bought a Wi-Fi analyzer app. It shows your router is too powerful. The signal crosses property lines. That's illegal, you know." I raised an eyebrow. "Illegal? Having a strong signal?" She folded her arms. "You're stealing airspace." I nearly choked on my laughter. "Airspace? What am I, an airport?" That was the last straw for Lily. She pointed at me with her phone like it was a weapon. "You can laugh all you want, but we're not crazy. The internet company told us about frequency overlap. That means your router is perfectly normal." I interrupted. "Overlap doesn't mean interference. It's like two people talking in a crowd. You just change the channel." But Reason and the Karen sisters were like oil and water. They'd never mix. Brenda bent down and adjusted one of the devices on the table. "We'll prove it. This detector picks up Wi-Fi energy." "Wi-Fi energy?" I repeated. "Yes," she said firmly. "It measures how much of your signal is invading our home." I sighed. "That's not a thing." Before I could walk away, I heard the faint crackle of static from their setup. Then poof, a tiny spark shot from one of the devices, followed by a small puff of smoke. Brenda screamed and stumbled backward. "Unplug it," Lily shouted. I did unplug it. They both jumped away from the smoking gadget as if it were a live bomb. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. "Wow," I said. "Maybe your detector just detected how bad your science is." They glared at me, but I could tell they were shaken. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. Eventually, Lily kicked the device into a bucket of water, muttering, "Stupid thing." I went back inside, chuckling, and called it a day. But by sunset, I realized the sisters still hadn't learned their lesson. That evening, while watering my plants, I overheard them through the open window next door. "This isn't over," Brenda hissed. "He's mocking us." "I know," Lily replied. "But we'll get even. He can't just ruin our signal and get away with it." I shook my head, smiling to myself. "Some people just don't believe in peace," I muttered. The next morning I woke to another surprise. A bright orange extension cord was snaking across the grass from my fence straight into their yard. My jaw dropped. They'd actually plugged into one of my outdoor outlets. I stormed outside. "Are you serious?" I shouted. Lily popped her head over the fence. "Oh, you're up. Don't worry, it's just temporary. We needed to charge the signal detector." "You're stealing my power now." "It's not stealing," Brenda said defensively. "It's compensation. Your router still messes with our Wi-Fi." I yanked the cord from the socket and tossed it back over the fence. "If you touch anything on my property again, I'm calling the cops." "I mean it," they both gasped dramatically, like I'd just threatened their lives. "You'd call the police over electricity," Lily scoffed. "I'd call them over trespassing," I snapped. "You've crossed the line, literally." They muttered something under their breath, but they didn't argue further. I could tell they were fuming. For the rest of the day they sulked around, whispering to each other like villains planning their next move. I didn't know what they'd try next, but one thing was clear. Their obsession had gone beyond Wi-Fi. It had become personal. That night, I sat on my porch, the golden light fading into a soft evening glow. The air was calm again, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Two grown women so caught up in their own delusions, convinced that invisible waves were plotting against them. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't the end. The Karen sisters were too proud to accept defeat. Their last attempt had blown up literally, but they'd be back. They always came back. And as I sat there listening to the quiet hum of my perfectly functioning Wi-Fi, I couldn't help but smile. Because whatever they planned next, I had a feeling karma was already ahead of them. And this time, it wouldn't just hit their internet, it would hit their egos, their pride, and their entire illusion of control. The war wasn't over. The next round was just waiting for daylight. The morning after the power theft incident, I woke up expecting the usual drama, maybe another ridiculous note taped to my door, or the sound of Brenda yelling at customer service from her porch. But when I stepped outside, the air was eerily calm. The neighborhood birds chirped like nothing had happened. The sky glowed a perfect shade of blue, and for a split second I thought maybe, just maybe, the Karen sisters had finally given up. I should have known better by mid-morning. I noticed them outside again. Lily stood with a clipboard, Brenda with her phone, and both were glaring at the space between our houses like they were planning a construction project. The folding table from yesterday was back, only this time they'd added a small portable fan, a stack of tangled cables, and God help me, a brand new router still in its box. I leaned against my porch railing, sipping my coffee, watching them like I was watching an episode of Neighborhood Disasters, the Karen edition. Brenda noticed me first. "Oh, don't mind us," she called out in that sugary tone people use when they actually want you to mind them a lot. "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied. "We've decided to fix the problem ourselves," Lily announced proudly. "We did some research last night. Turns out Wi-Fi interference can be solved with signal redirection." "Signal redirection," I repeated, fighting the urge to laugh. "And that means—" "It means we're setting up a new router right by the fence," Brenda said. "So your signal stays on your side." I couldn't help but grin. "You know routers don't work like border control, right?" Brenda ignored me, plugging in the new device. Lily connected cables and started tapping on a laptop like a hacker from a bad movie. Within minutes, they had extension cords running across the grass, tangled wires everywhere, and one router sitting dangerously close to a puddle from last night's rain. I considered warning them, but at this point, I figured it was safer to just let Karma do her thing. They spent nearly an hour fiddling with the setup, whispering and arguing. I could hear snippets like, "You're holding the cable wrong," and "Don't stand too close. Brenda, it messes with the frequency." Finally, Brenda stood up triumphantly. "It's done, our signal's isolated." I was tempted to clap. "Congratulations, how's the connection?" She smiled smugly and turned to check her phone. A moment later her face fell. Lily, it's not working." Lily frowned. "What do you mean it's not working? It has to be." They both stared at the new router, which suddenly began to flicker. The small light on it flashed red, then smoke began to rise. "Unplug it," Brenda screamed. I did unplug it, Lily shouted back, but she hadn't. Sparks popped out, followed by a faint sizzling sound. The sisters jumped backward in horror as the smell of burnt plastic filled the air. I set down my coffee cup. "Need a fire extinguisher?" I called out helpfully. "Stay out of this," Lily snapped, waving a hand like I was the problem. A moment later, the router gave one last pitiful crackle and went completely dark. Their signal redirection experiment had officially flatlined. For a few seconds, they just stood there, staring at the smoking box. Then Brenda threw her hands up. "That's it, I'm done. We're calling the internet company again." I went back inside, chuckling to myself, but their yelling carried on loud enough for me to hear through the walls. "Your stupid internet is still ruining ours," Lily shouted over the phone. "No, you keep ruining yours," Brenda barked. "We wouldn't have to keep fixing it if you didn't have that overpowered router." I decided to step outside again, mostly out of morbid curiosity. When I did, Lily was pacing in circles with her phone to her ear. "Yes, hi," she said into the receiver. "We need a technician immediately. Our Wi-Fi exploded." She paused, then frowned. "What do you mean that's not possible?" Her face turned redder by the second. "No, I don't care about your safety guidelines. We followed the instructions. Well, most of them." I could tell whoever was on the other end wasn't buying her story. She kept gesturing wildly, insisting that I was somehow to blame for her Wi-Fi dying, as though my mere existence sent electromagnetic curses across property lines. Eventually she hung up, looking utterly defeated. "They said we have to wait 2 days for a technician," she said bitterly. Brenda gasped. 2 days? What are we supposed to do without Wi-Fi for 2 days? I couldn't resist. Maybe talk to each other, read a book, enjoy nature. Lily shot me a look sharp enough to cut through concrete. "Don't be smug. This isn't funny." "Oh, I think it's hilarious," I said, grinning. "Maybe next time you'll leave the technology to the professionals." The rest of the day was pure entertainment. Without Wi-Fi, the sisters were completely lost. They couldn't stream their shows, couldn't scroll through social media, and couldn't even complain online, which, I suspect, was their greatest suffering. By noon, they had resorted to using mobile data, but their signal was weak, and every few minutes I'd hear one of them shout, "It's buffering again," or "Why is it taking so long to load?" At one point, Brenda stormed outside, holding her phone high in the air like an Olympic torch, yelling, "Stand right here, Lily, I get 1 extra bar in this spot." I nearly choked, trying not to laugh. By late afternoon, the heat had gotten to them. They sat on their porch fanning themselves, grumbling about corrupt internet companies and greedy neighbors. I stayed inside, working happily with my fully functional Wi-Fi and air conditioning, occasionally glancing out the window just to watch their misery unfold. But the real comedy came at sunset. I heard a loud crash followed by a scream. I rushed to the window and saw that Brenda had tripped over one of their extension cords, knocking over the small table that held their laptop. The laptop hit the ground with a loud crack. "My computer," she shrieked. "It's broken." Lily rushed over, panicking. "Oh no, no, no. That was our only laptop." I stepped outside slowly, trying to keep a straight face. Everything okay over there? Brenda's glare could have melted steel. This is your fault. I raised an eyebrow. Mine, I wasn't even near you. You and your stupid Wi-Fi have cursed this house, she shouted. Ever since you moved in, nothing's worked right. I folded my arms. You sure it's not just karma? Because from where I'm standing, it seems pretty balanced. They both froze for a moment, clearly realizing how ridiculous they sounded, but, being Karens, they refused to admit it. Without another word, they dragged their broken laptop and fried router back inside as the evening sun dipped behind the rooftops. The neighborhood grew quiet again. I sat back on my porch, enjoying the cool breeze and my perfectly strong internet connection. Through their window, I could see the sisters sitting in darkness, probably sulking about their ruined gadgets. That day, under the bright daylight and blue sky, karma didn't just tap them on the shoulder, it practically danced around their backyard, waving a victory flag. They'd tried to destroy my connection, and in the process, they'd destroyed everything of their own. For the first time since moving here, I actually felt peace. But I also knew one thing. The Karen sisters weren't the type to stay quiet for long. And when they came back, because they always did, karma would be ready for its encore. The next morning felt different, calmer, quieter, and almost too peaceful to trust. The Karen sisters' house stood still, curtains drawn. Not a sound or complaint coming from inside. It was strange. For the first time since I'd moved into the neighborhood, I couldn't hear Brenda arguing with customer service or Lily pacing around demanding justice. I should have been relieved. But when Karens go silent, it usually means something's brewing. Sure enough, around noon, the calm broke. I heard the familiar sound of their door slamming open and the sisters marching out like soldiers on a mission. Brenda wore sunglasses, a clipboard tucked under her arm, while Lily carried a small box labeled Signal Booster Pro, industrial strength. Oh no. I set down my lunch and went out to my porch. Morning, I called out. New experiment. Brenda glared over her glasses. We're done experimenting. This is war. Lily held up the box. This booster will make sure our Wi-Fi finally works properly. We bought it online from a professional installer. Let me guess, I said. A website with more pop-ups than instructions. She ignored me. Once this is installed, we'll have perfect signal. And no one, she looked directly at me, can interfere again. I had to admit, I was curious to see how badly this would end. So, I leaned back, arms crossed, ready for the show. The sisters unpacked the booster like they were unveiling a new invention. It was a bulky metallic device with way too many wires and blinking lights. They placed it on a metal stool near the fence, conveniently close to my side, and started connecting it to their power strip. Are you sure that's safe? I asked. Brenda smirked. Don't worry. We watched a tutorial. That was all I needed to hear to know disaster was inevitable. As they plugged it in, the machine emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a low hum that made the air vibrate. The lights blinked faster. Green, red, blue, like a disco ball on steroids. Then, something weird happened. My phone suddenly disconnected from Wi-Fi. I checked my router. All lights were still green, but every device in my house showed no internet connection. I frowned. What did you just turn on? Brenda looked smug. Our signal booster. It looks like it's working already. Working, I said, holding up my phone. You just knocked out my connection. Lily gasped. Wait, what? That's not supposed to happen. The machine started to buzz louder, and static filled the air. A faint burning smell drifted from their porch. Sparks flickered along the cable, and before they could react, boom, the booster sparked violently, shooting a flash of light and smoke skyward. The sisters screamed and stumbled back, waving their hands to clear the air. Oh my God, unplug it, Lily yelled. Brenda grabbed the cord and yanked it from the socket, nearly tripping over the power strip in panic. The smoking device hissed, then went completely dark. I stood there, trying not to laugh, but the sight of them covered in dust and panic was too much. Looks like your signal got boosted straight to heaven. Brenda's jaw dropped. This is sabotage. You did something. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I hacked your extension cord with my psychic powers. They stormed off inside, coughing and muttering about filing a report. I thought that was the end of it, but karma had other plans. An hour later, I heard a loud knock at my door. I opened it to find a man in a bright blue uniform with a badge that read MetroNet Repairs. Afternoon, sir, he said politely. We received a report of a Wi-Fi outage in this area. 2 complaints from this address and the one next door. I sighed. Yeah, that tracks. Come on in, you might want to start over there. They've been experimenting. He chuckled. Say no more. That happens all the time. We both went outside, and when he approached the sisters' house, their front door swung open. Brenda rushed out, waving her clipboard. Finally, someone who understands our suffering. Lily followed, pointing toward the charred booster. This man, she said, gesturing at me, has been sabotaging our internet for weeks. The technician blinked. Ma'am, that's not how Wi-Fi works. Yes, it is, Brenda snapped. His router is too powerful. It's stealing our signal. He looked at her with the same patience you'd reserve for a child explaining quantum physics with crayons. Ma'am, routers can't steal signals. And whatever that thing is, he pointed to the fried booster, isn't approved equipment. Lily crossed her arms. We followed instructions. He crouched beside the box, examining the melted wires. Yeah, instructions probably written by someone in their basement. This could have caused a fire. Brenda's face turned bright red. Well, we were only trying to fix what your company refuses to. The man stood, brushing off his hands. Actually, ma'am, from the looks of it, you fried your internal modem too. That's gonna take a full replacement. What? She screamed. You mean we have to pay for it? Afraid so, he said cheerfully. Tampering voids the warranty. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started laughing. The technician glanced my way, trying to stay professional, but I could see the corners of his mouth twitching. Lily glared at both of us. You think this is funny? Not funny, I said, wiping my eyes. It's poetic. The technician replaced a few cables and checked his tablet. All right, sir, he said, turning to me. Your internet should be stable again. Sure enough, my Wi-Fi signal popped back instantly. The Karen's network, however, was completely gone. When he left, the sisters sulked on their porch defeated. Brenda looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Lily just stared at the blackened remains of the booster, whispering, we were so close. I walked over to the fence, resting a hand on the top plank. You know, I said softly, sometimes, karma doesn't need help. It just waits. They didn't reply. For the first time, they had no comeback, no threats, no lectures, just silence. As the sun set, painting the sky orange and gold, the once chaotic block felt at peace again. The Karen's windows stayed dark, and I finally enjoyed an uninterrupted evening with my streaming shows, my Wi-Fi stronger than ever. Over the next few days, things changed. The sisters became quieter, less visible. No more shouting, no more interference. Occasionally I saw them tending to their garden or sitting on the porch reading actual books. Maybe the absence of Wi-Fi had rewired them for good. One evening as I walked by, Brenda looked up and said, We're sorry for the trouble. It caught me off guard. You mean that? She nodded reluctantly. We were just frustrated, but I guess we went too far. I smiled. Apology accepted. Maybe next time try meditation instead of microwaving routers. Lily chuckled softly, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes that wasn't pure hostility, just humility. By the time I went home, I realized something beautiful. The neighborhood finally had balance. No feuds, no chaos, just peace and strong Wi-Fi signals all around. Karma had done her job perfectly in me. I learned that sometimes, the best revenge isn't fighting back. It's sitting back and letting the signal of karma do the work.